Hello, everyone. It's the Mio on MMA podcast, and I'm back to review UFC Louisville, as well as I'll quickly talk about the one card because it was pretty goddamn fun. I didn't do predictions on it or anything like that. I seldom do with one cards because they tend to be very grappling and boxing heavy, or not boxing, kickboxing, Muay Thai heavy, etc. And just at the end of the day, I don't follow either sport nearly close enough as I'm trying to find the card here because, being me, I forgot to pull it up, but it was really solid. It was the Taiwan Chai, not a wet card, number 2. Main event was really good, although the majority decision is very weird because I was under the impression, and it seems like I'm not the only one, it seems like there's a lot of people who are under this impression, that a draw was not actually possible in one. So how does one get a majority decision? Because it's not a split decision, so it's not 2 judges for Taiwan Chai and 2 judges or 1 judge for Smokin' Joe. It's 1 judge scored a draw to get a majority decision. So I don't really understand how that would work, particularly given it's not like for those who are not aware, the UFC and most American promotions, anyways, use the 10-point must system. So it is quite possible to get a draw because you could have 1 round that is squeak to fighter A, 1 round that is squeak to fighter A, and then the third round is like fighter B just dominating. The 10-8 round, you get a 28-28 scorecard, you have a draw. They discourage scoring rounds as a draw, but a fight can be a draw. One doesn't have that because they have the pride style, score the fight as a whole. And supposedly you can't score a draw. So I'm curious as to what that judge did that got us a majority decision there. But it was a really good fight. So was the Rod Tang versus Puric fight. Puric showed off way better than I expected him to. I thought that was going to be a massacre. It was not. It was good. We got a calf slicer from Mikey Musumeci against João Gabriel Souza. Also fun. Cade Rotolo got a rear naked choke against Blake Cooper. Doesn't mean much, but hey, Cade making his UFC or MMA debut. That's cool. And he's not going to fight anyone big. So, Blake Cooper is fine. Other than that, I really enjoyed the Denishi Zamboanga versus Noel Grandjean fight. It was exploitative of Grandjean's lack of striking, but still, we also had Adrian Lee's MMA debut in a cool, not really cool, but it's always cool to see a guillotine choke someone out, and Itsuki Harada lost again, this time to Victoria Souza. In that fashion. Harada is 1-4 in her last 5. It's really weird. There was a time not that long ago that admittedly she was 5-0, but Harada was the up and coming star in women's MMA. And then she ran into Shadowcat Jin Ranzawan, lost that fight, beat Hishen Lin, which is still her biggest achievement, and now has lost to Sohee Ham, Ayaka Miura, and now Victoria Souza. It's a bit weird because she has all the physical gifts to be an amazingly good fighter, and it's just not working out. There is always the problem, though, and this fight was a highlight of it, that one loves doing these you're getting $50,000 straight from Chatre, Sidio Tong. Then they don't give it to Victoria Souza, who just pulled off a massive upset. I actually wonder what were the betting odds here? Kind of curious. I didn't look at betting odds because I, as a rule, do not bet on one fighting championship at any time. But I imagine it was pretty big. Okay, it wasn't that big. She was only a -200 to -225 favorite. Okay. I was thinking it'd be more. I was thinking it'd be 300 at least. But it was not. So there you go. But anyways, you pull off that big upset, not so big upset apparently, but a fairly large upset, and you don't get the 50K because you're not one of the stars. Whereas Adrian Lee, in a fight that he was meant to win, let's be honest, gets the 50 grand. That's the usual problem with its changing rule set and all that fun. Then we had UFC Louisville, which is going to be the thing we're going to talk about the most here. This card started off pretty bad, if we're being honest, because the first fight was fine, not great. The second fight was fine, not great. The third fight was terrible. The fourth fight was fine, not great. The fifth fight was not very good. And then we get into like Brad Katona, Jesse Butler, which was terrible. And then finally we get something here. The first knockout apparently with the new gloves, although it was a knee to the body, so does it count? I don't know. Carlos Prates versus Charles Radke. That was a cool knockout. Ludwig Klein, Thiago Moises was fun times. Soriano versus Baeza was pretty sad. Zach Reese versus Marquez was really, really short, but hey, that's what you want from two sloppy middleweights, so there you go. Bruno Ferreira was a cool knockout. Raul Rosas Jr., Ricky Turcios was a perfectly serviceable fight. Dominic Reyes got a big comeback win, not in the sense that he came back from like, getting his butt kicked or anything, although he was losing. But like just like winning at this point is for Dominic Reyes is a comeback. And then a pretty big comeback, I thought, because I had it 30-27 on my card, by Nasruddin Imavov against Jared Cannonier. Stoppage that some people are not happy with. We'll talk about that more in depth. I thought it was okay. But I at the same time, I do totally understand people who are not happy with the stoppage. So I'm not going to argue it was a good stoppage. I'm just going to say that I didn't have a problem with it. So let's talk about that fight. Jared Cannonier, Nasruddin Imavov, the main event. I had it 3-0 for Cannonier. The first round was the only one that has to go to him, though. He landed more strikes in the first round, and I think definitely took the round. Like, landed the harder shots, landed more of them. There you go. There was no real grappling to consider in the first round. Really, there was no grappling to consider in this entire fight. Cannonier was utilizing, grappling to smother stuff that Imavov was doing. But let's be real. There was, let's see here, 3 takedowns between the two of them. There was about 7 minutes of control time, most of which was just clinch control time. That didn't really lead to much. But yeah, Cannonier outlanding him 38-16 in the first round. Harder shots, easily his round. Second and third round, very, very close. Literally speaking here, Imavov outlanded Cannonier in the second round by about 11 strikes. Or 9 strikes, pardon me. I swear I can do math. And then 4 strikes in the third round. So like very much push rounds. Really depends on if you thought, like I did, that Cannonier landed the better shots. Or if you thought that Imavov, who landed more shots, landed the better shots as well. And then those rounds would have to be his. But like a very competitive, close fight that could have been 29-28 either way. Could have been 30-27 for Cannonier. And I think Cannonier was up on 2 cards at the time of the stoppage. Let's see here. Sal D'Amato had it 29-28 Cannonier, 29-28 Cannonier on Derek Cleary's card, and 29-28 on Camijo's card. All 3 judges did give the second round to Imavov, and the third round went to Imavov on 1 card. There you go. And then in the fourth round, it's looking good, actually. Cannonier going from stuff. He's getting like kind of creative with like a spinning elbow and stuff and like trying to do some things. But Imavov is like hitting him back and, doing his thing. Imavov staggers Cannonier very badly, has him on the stanky legs. He's following up. He's throwing some knees, throwing uppercuts, throwing hooks, swarming, trying to get the finish as it is. Herzog steps in. He was the referee for this fight. And then Cannonier is protesting because, well, he's still standing. And a standing TKO is always pretty rare. I think always will be questioned by whoever gets standing TKO'd. Let's be honest. But also it looked like he was kind of coming around right about when the stoppage happened. So I get it. But I think that, like, if you're... I think the irony is that had Herzog stopped the fight, like, 30 seconds before he did... Maybe not 30, maybe like 15 seconds. But like, had he stopped it a little bit earlier, we probably wouldn't have the conversation because Cannonier was definitely out on his feet. Like he was running, like really running away from Imavov, which is not supposed to be intelligent defense. But it was just that by the time he did, he was actually kind of coming around. So I get it. And people brought up that like Cannonier's 40. He's not going to get back into title contention if he loses this fight. But here's the thing. I don't think a referee should care about that. I think a referee should do the same job regardless of who's in the ring. Like, honestly, that's the thing. Unless you have a case of, like, somebody who's, like, famously durable or something. Like, that you could, I guess, get away with, like, some alterations based on that. But I don't think Jason Herzog should approach the fight differently because it's 40-year-old Jared Cannonier. And if he loses this fight, he's never going to get a title shot again. And that's a travesty because he probably should have already had one after beating Sean Strickland, and then Sean Strickland got a title shot. Go figure. But yeah, I don't think Herzog did a bad job here. I understand the concerns, but I thought that it was okay. Anyways, for next fights, I got Imavov versus the loser of Whitaker and Khamzat. This is the only thing that really makes any sense. And Cannonier I've got against Brendan Allen, because that feels like the next step up for Brendan Allen. Then we had Dominic Reyes versus Dustin Jacoby. Lots of low kicks early on, and like Reyes looking not very comfortable. I don't know if it's just like a default expression that he has. I should go back and watch some earlier fights, like during Reyes' run to the title, and see if the look on his face is the same kind of nervousness, discomfort. I haven't watched a fight of his from like back then in quite some time because they have become analytically irrelevant. So maybe I need to go back and do that and see, like, was this just kind of like always a feature and I've just kind of forgotten about it? But he still looked nervous. He still looked unsure of himself, which makes sense. He's been on a terrible run, blah, blah, blah. There you go. Jacoby lands a good hard shot, starts flirting against the cage against Reyes, but Reyes stings him back, and Jacoby could not recover. And Dominic Reyes, in the year 2024, has himself a knockout win against a guy who is ranked and a legitimate striker in Dustin Jacoby, and a legitimate guy that's hard to finish. Who was the last guy to finish Jacoby? Out of curiosity. You would again think I would have looked this up beforehand, but I didn't. Man, okay, it's going to be a while back here. The last person to finish Jacoby was an injury against Simon Marcus in 2016. And in MMA, you have to go back to John Salter in 2015. So Ray is making a heck of a statement here with this victory. I don't know. Like, I come out of this with a weird feeling. Because on one hand, like, he won the fight. And it was honestly something I didn't think. I picked Jacoby to win. And it's something I honestly didn't think I'd see. I just thought Reyes was kind of broken. But I also can't really make myself think that, like, he's not broken. Like, he did get hurt in this fight. He was losing up until the point where he got the knockout. He was looking unsure of himself and all of those things that, like, the worry is still there. But, like, apparently he only ate 6 strikes per UFC stats. So there is that. He got 2 knockdowns. He got the finish. Who knows? Maybe this is a turn of a new leaf. I don't know if I want to count on that. And that makes the next opponent for him very questionable for me, because as much as I applaud Jacoby as a technician and as a tough guy and all of that stuff, he is towards the lower end of any kind of physicality that you would think of at 205. And that's kind of the question, is that, like, he did hurt Reyes. And if that's somebody else, if that's someone more power shot heavy, like Yuri Prohaska, like Alex Pereira, like, you know, let's just go down the Tapology rankings here for like a hot second here at 205. And, you know, I think it'll make my point for me that, like, Jacoby is, well, one of the better technical strikers of this group, is not one of the more physical strikers of this group. You've got Magomed Ankalaev. It's a whole different can of beans, but whatever. Prohaska, Alex Pereira, Jan Blachowicz, Jamal Hill, Alexander Rakic, Johnny Walker, Khalil Roundtree, even Nikita Krylov, probably a harder hitter than Dustin Jacoby. Volkan Oezdemir, almost certainly. But I'm going to go with an Anthony Smith fight for his next fight, because Smith is kind of the closest thing you have to Jacoby in terms of, like, he's not an overwhelming physical presence, but he is technical. He is tough. He's a weird kind of tough, but he's a bizarre kind of tough, but, like, it feels like the exact right kind of matchup for Reyes. They're also both guys who lost to John Jones, and probably should have beat him, because I'm personally of the camp that Anthony Smith should have totally taken the DQ victory against John Jones, because I assure you, John Jones would have taken a DQ victory. And of course, Reyes, I've watched that fight a number of times, and every time I've watched it, I've come out with Reyes winning against Jones. And even Dana White, who is John Jones' #1 fluffer right now, back in the day, thought that fight was a robbery. So there you go. But anyways, that's the matchup I would do next. And then for Jacoby, I've got Ryan Spawn as like a cool, fun fight of guys who are, they're not going to be title contenders, but they're fun. They can put on a decent fight. You can put it on a main card. You can make it a co-main event for a fight night, and it's not going to feel like a letdown. Raul Rosas Jr. versus Ricky Turcios. Now, controversially, I scored the first round for Turcios. Now, and I want to look at the numbers here, and I have not looked at them yet. I wonder if it's going to change my mind, but it's probably not going to. That's my personal opinion here. Yeah, Rosas landed one significant strike in the first round. He landed 21 total strikes, mostly like ground and pound pitter patter. And Turcios landed 5 significant strikes, 50 ground and pound pitter patters. Nothing great, but he had a legitimate submission attempt. Not a great one. Someone said that like they didn't think that the choke was all that in. I don't know. That was enough of a submission for me to score it as a legit submission attempt. That's my opinion. If that's not a serious submission attempt, then we just might as well throw anything out that doesn't get a finish. like that's my opinion. And Rosa scored like 4 minutes of top control, but we are not supposed to score top control. Now, all of this becomes completely irrelevant because in the second round, Rosas gets the win via the rear naked choke. So there you go. So the big question is, did we learn anything about Rosas Jr. that we didn't know before? Obviously, I picked Turcios to win, so I am, by default, impressed. But at the same time, like, Ricky Turcios doesn't feel like a matchup that is like particularly representative of the rest of the division. Like, he's not physically overpowering. He is a guy you can take down without too much problem. That was actually my thing, is that like he can get taken down and still win. So I don't know. It still represents a better win than Rosas has had to date. So that's cool. That's fine, because let's be honest, his biggest win prior to this was it Jay Perrin? Yeah, it was Jay Perrin. He's beating Jay Perrin, Terrence Mitchell, who's terrible. You know what? Actually, I'm going to say this. His win on Dana White Contender Series, probably better than Jay Perrin. Mando Gutierrez, I think, is actually like a reasonably decent fighter. I think he fought again on Contender Series and won. Did he not? I'm looking at his record. No, I'm thinking of somebody else who came back. He was on The Ultimate Fighter and lost to Cody Gibson. I think that was what it was. Anyways. But yeah, that's got to be what I was thinking of. But yeah, it's still, I don't know. And like, people are quick to say like, he's 19 years old, he'll get better. And I have no doubt of that. Like, he is super young. But the UFC is like pushing this kid. It's kind of like the Sage Northcutt dilemma all over again, where it's like, yeah, if Sage Northcutt was given time to develop, we'd probably be talking about him as like a really good fighter. Like, he had all the building blocks to be really, really solid. But it was that, probably to his detriment, and I guess this is my problem, is I think this is going to happen to Rosas as well. He was pushed to the moon. And there was never any pause. So Rosas was pushed to the absolute moon here. And as a result, there's always going to be expectations, because they're going to use hyperbole to talk about his skills, and it doesn't really line up. Like, it intrinsically is going to poison someone such as myself to his performances, because realistically, he's beating guys that probably don't belong in the UFC, and we're supposed to cheer it. We're supposed to talk about how great he is right now, and not as a prospect. It's a bit weird in that regard. Anyways, for our next opponent, I've got Rosas versus Sergey Morozov, because I think this is a perfect spot for Morozov, who is not very technical. He's very much just a physical, like, blunt hammer. And if Rosas can beat that, it would actually mean something. For Turcios, I just said he's not really UFC caliber, and therefore I don't really care. I mean, I guess you can put him in there with any kind of like wrestler that comes off the Contender Series and be like, here's a guy who is going to scramble like a madman. What do you do with him? And can you beat him? So, I mean, I guess that is a perfectly useful role for him. Bruno Ferreira was having some problems with Dustin Stolfus. He got taken down. Stolfus was actually threatening a Peruvian necktie at one point. Very, very weird, but he goes for the back control, ends up falling off, tries to grab a leg, clears the leg. Stolfus chases him to the fence, keeps connected with him, but then Ferreira connects with a big overhand, starts the end of it here. Back elbow, boom, done. There you go. Bruno Fajea calls out Bo Nickel. It's fine. It's actually what I'm going to say. He should fight Bo Nickel. And Stolfus, I don't really care. He's a significantly uninteresting fighter with a very limited athletic background. And he's just not very good. Like, he doesn't even have like the Tercios thing where it's like, at least there is a sort of archetype of fighter coming off the Contender Series that you could use him as a proving ground for, because he's just really kind of a subpar wrestler. I respect the toughness. I respect the grit and determination. I respect the delusion that Stolfus has in himself to think that this is a pathway forward. It's no hate on him as a man. It's just he's not good. He doesn't have the requisite stuff. And we're going to talk about Punahele Soriano later, but like that was kind of the thing, is like Soriano losing to Stolfus was where I like lost faith in him. So I don't know. Julian Marquez got knocked out by Zach Reese really, really quickly. I don't think this tells me anything about Zach Reese. We've seen Marquez get knocked out before. I don't know. We did learn that he doesn't do tape study at all. And I suppose if you're like a really formless fighter, it doesn't really matter. Anyways, I've got Reese against Eor Potaria. I've got Marquez versus Dushko Todorovic. I don't know. Reese might be something. He is massive after all. 6'4", 77-inch reach at middleweight is considerable. It's just, I don't know. There's nothing to this date that I have seen that makes me think that he is actually particularly good. Punahele Soriano versus Miguel Baeza. This was interesting for 2 rounds. Baeza was winning the stand-up stuff with some nice clinch work and some sharp knees and so on, but he got taken down and he got beaten on the ground. Now, initially, he was looking for some subs. He went for, I think, a leg lock on a couple of occasions, an arm bar and stuff, and was generally kind of fighting somewhat well. Although, again, losing. Apparently, Soriano setting a record for the division for most ground strikes in a fight. And then the second round comes, and there's still a little bit of that fight from Baeza with going for the knee bar and so on. But he's getting beat up. And then between the second and the third round, honestly, like the doctor checks on him. Honestly, if I was in his corner, I would have thrown the towel in. He looked beaten. He looked done. And he was definitely done in the third round because he got 10-8'd by a guy who wasn't really even doing that much on top. He was just getting beat up. I want to know what the stats for this third round were, because I imagine they're terrible. They only credited him with 7 significant strikes in the entire fight. And by the way, 5 of them were in the first round. Yeah, he had 8 strikes, man. Even the second round, I'm looking at the stats down. I have to probably go with getting 49-1 in significant strikes and 93-3 in total strikes. Probably warrants a 10-8. I just remembered a couple of submission attempts that like they kept me away from it. But yeah, you got 184-8 in the third round. I'm kind of done with Miguel Baeza. He has all of the physical skills, and I think actually even some of the technical ability to be a very good fighter. Like, there was a reason that I think everybody was excited about this guy. Not even that many fights ago. Like, it's a long time ago because he took 2 years off here. So there's a fair amount of time between when we were excited and now. But like the number of fights, it's like we were excited about this guy when he came in and beat Hector Aldana a little bit. And then he beat Matt Brown, and we were very excited. And then he beat Takeshi Sato. We're like, all right, this is fun. This is good. Had a decent fight with Santiago Ponzinibbio, but then knocked out by Chaos Williams, Andre Fiallo, and now just absolutely dominated by Punahele Soriano. It's a mental block that I have no idea how he overcomes. Because once things start going badly for him, they just keep going badly. There's no ability to fight back from adversity. So the only people I would trust him to beat are people he can just kind of nuke really quickly. And he's not particularly physically durable. Like, he got to the end of this fight, but let's be honest, Soriano was not hitting him with hard stuff. Like, the ground and pound was record setting for volume, but certainly not for impact. So yeah, I am left just saying I don't I kind of want to see Baez kind of retire and just go on to do other things in his life. Maybe he can do some grappling events and stuff. Like, he seems to have fun with that. But I don't want to see him fight. He will, though. The UFC will hang on to him, and he will not retire. Soriano, I've got against Trevin Giles because I just want to see him tested against a big athletic dude, and we'll see if this can go places. I didn't really think the 170 cut would actually really help him, but hey, I picked him to win the fight, and he won the fight. Thiago Moises versus Ludwig Klein. Ludwig Klein looked really good here. Really, 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 really good here. I might have to just eat the humble pie, all the humble pie, because Ludwig Klein is a guy I have been overlooking for some time. Part of it is he's listed at 5'7". I don't think he actually is. Like, looking him in there with 5'9", Thiago Moises. I know Moises sits lower in his stance and everything, but like, I don't think there's any way Moises is 2 inches taller than him. But yeah, Klein knocked him down in the first round, knocked him down in the third round, almost finished him in the third round, outstruck him in every round, just shut it down. His takedown defense was on point. Moises went 0 for 8. The only mistake he really made was in the second round when he took Moises down and let Moises get a submission attempt right at the end of the round. That was about it. It was like one of those moments where he was like, oh, you want to go to the ground? You want to be a wrestler, eh? Fine, we'll wrestle. It was kind of like, if anyone remembers the Kenny Florian BJ Penn fight, like it was a fight where like Florian spent the entire fight trying to take down BJ Penn, like trying to smother him against the cage and drag him to the mat. And eventually at some point, Penn's just like, all right, you want to wrestle? You want to wrestle? You want to grapple? You want to grapple with BJ Penn? Fine. I'm offended that you want to do this. Bam. Just like destroys him on the ground. It was kind of like Klein trying to do that, but like it just got him into trouble. So ego moment aside, this was a phenomenal performance by Ludwig Klein. His striking looked on point in every regard. His boxing looked good. His kicking looked good. His takedown defense looked immaculate. And yeah, he got the job done. So I don't know. Maybe I need to start taking him really, really, really seriously. I've got him against Joel Alvarez for comedy of like the shortest guy in the division versus the tallest guy in the division. And Moises I've got against Mikdebek Oralbai. Because Oralbai, I want to see what happens when he fights somebody who he just theoretically can't just take down over and over and over again. Charles Radke versus Carlos Pratis was not amazing. I mean, like right off the bat, Radke clinches him up against the fence and starts spamming like hockey punch stuff, which being a Canadian, I got to thrill out. But like, I don't know, it was kind of a low simmer for a while. And then we got an eye poke by Pratis. And then not too long after the eye poke, we get Pratis, I think, hurts Radke up against the fence. Also traps Radke's hand. And then just laser knee to the body. So a great finish to an otherwise kind of forgettable fight. He wants to fight in Australia next time out because his daughter lives there. There's a story there that I do not know. But I mean, enjoy the higher taxes, I guess. I've got Pratis against the Ponzinibbio Salikov winner. My problem with Pratis is I just don't really see him holding up against like wrestling threats. So like he's pretty much a guy that I just want to keep sticking in fun striking fights. And like looking at going up, I'm like, who do I trust not to like grapple him? And the closest I've got is well Salikov. And Ponzinibbio might grapple him even, but hey, we'll see. And then Radke I've got against Billy Goff. That would be fun. And I think last time Billy Goff fought, I didn't give him an opponent. I just said fun fights. There's your fun fight. Brad Katona versus Jesse Butler. This was not very good. Katona would put Butler on his back, and he couldn't get up. Basically, that kind of sums it up. There was a takedown in the first 2 rounds that he just didn't get up from. Round 3 was theoretically better because it was mostly stand-up, but Butler, it was the best round of the fight, but like Butler never really got out of first gear, and that's kind of the problem is that Butler was coming down to 135, and I didn't think he had a style that remotely really does anything with that. Don't get me wrong, he's 5'10". He's a massive bantamweight, but he doesn't have a style that really weaponizes his reach. He doesn't really have a style that weaponizes his weight, and it just feels like he's cutting 10 pounds more than he has to. I don't really have an opponent for him because I don't have a role for him, like at all. But for Katona, I've got John Matsumoto because Matsumoto impressed me last time out, and I would love to see him against a really technical opposition opponent, and Brad Katona is that. He's not venomous, he doesn't finish people, but he is superbly well-rounded, and you go in there and see what Matsumoto can do with that. Andrew Lee versus Montana De La Rosa. I gave Lee the first round. I gave Montana De La Rosa the second and the third round. I don't have much else to say. It was essentially Lee kind of running out of gas. And again, I guess I'll go through the stats here, because there apparently it was 75 to 70 significant strikes, which is pretty busy. But yeah, I don't know. Lee just kind of ran out of gas, I think, by the third round. Got taken down, held down for about 2 minutes. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to make of the fight, because it's like Lee is, what is that, 4 straight losses? Something like that? Something in that general vicinity of like 4 straight losses getting cut? They're against, yeah, 5 actually. I mean, they're against perfectly fine fighters. I want to make that clear. Vivia Rougeau, Macy Barber, Natalia Silva, Miranda Maverick, Montana De La Rosa. It's fine. But I don't know. There's the age coming into play, and the fact that she's now 13-10. It just looks weird on a record. But anyways, Montana De La Rosa needed this win because she had lost herself 3 in a row to JJ Aldridge, Tatiana Suarez, and Macy Barber, which again is a good group. But I don't know. I think this was just kind of the younger fighter getting through. Kind of curious. This was a split decision. I haven't looked at the cards here. Andrew Lee versus Montana De La Rosa. Andrew Lee got rounds 1 and 2 on Rob Pope's card, and the other 2 judges had my scorecard. Yeah, I guess you can give round 2. Apparently it was like a 1 strike difference and whatever. I guess if you thought Lee landed some better strikes, I personally didn't. But if you thought that's fine. It's a perfectly fine split decision. We're going to talk about some scorecards in a bit, because there is a couple of controversial ones earlier in the night. I don't think anything we've talked to up until now was that controversial. Could be wrong. Let me just quickly look back through here. Yeah, I think the Cannonier fight was the only scorecards I saw being discussed. Daniel Marcos versus John Castaneda. This was a pretty fun and solid fight, but basically at the end of the day, the problem here was that Castaneda at no point could match Marcos' horsepower. That was basically it. It's that even when the strikes were somewhat even, Marcos was clearly hitting Castaneda much harder. He was able to stumble Castaneda in the first round. He was able to hurt him again in the first round. But in the third round, it got weird, because there was a low blow that the replay said was legal, and then did it again. Castaneda kept trying to get a timeout, basically. He was foul hunting, and it's never a good sign. Anyways, Castaneda did end up falling to the mat, but I think it was a slip. It wasn't a knockdown. And, oh no, okay, here we are in my notes. Did drop him in the third round with a right hand. He smelled blood. Castaneda managed to wobble Marcos back in the later stages of the third round, but Marcos was able to just kind of backpedal away from him and survive. So I've got Marcos against Adrian Yanez. I've got Castaneda against Marcus McGee. I have Marcus McGee against everybody, apparently. So I don't know. One of those will hopefully, one of those scatter shots will hopefully get through. Gomes versus Mora was a terrible fight. There was a deep guillotine from Gomes. And to be clear, it's not Gomes' fault. It's Mora's fault. She missed weight, and she spent the entire fight just zombieing after her, trying to take her down and having not really any success. There were takedowns, but she could not hold Gomes down at any point. How many takedowns did they give her? They gave her 5 takedowns. A lot of people were super angry about the second round being called against Mora, or pardon me, for Mora against Gomes. And to be clear, I agree, because I don't think there's a round here you can give Mora. I don't care about the top control, but I found the first round actually to be the more ridiculous one, because I think a judge gave round 1 to Mora before I commit to, yeah, there it is. Judge Chris Kinman scored rounds 1 and 2 to Mora and gave her the fight. And I thought that was kind of ridiculous, because here's the breakdown. Mora got 2 takedowns in the first round and got 3 minutes of top control. Sure, great. You'd think, oh, that's amazing. But she also got nearly strangled by Gomes and landed 4 significant strikes and 9 total strikes. No, you should not win that round. I struggle to think of a round that you can win without knocking someone down on 4 significant strikes. I really, really do. I seriously do. 9 total strikes. I don't know what that round looks like. I don't understand. Also, you get caught into the by far best submission attempt of the fight. No, ridiculous, insane. Never let Chris Kinman judge a fight again. Please, Mike Bell, Gennaro Camijo, who are not good judges, got this right, 30-27. But anyways. And then the second round, Mora got it landed 69-9. So obviously that one's also ridiculous and had less top control. And then the third round, which was the round where the judges finally, where even Kinman could not give more of the round, Gomes landed her 36-9 and just was, I don't know. Mora is a weird case because, of course, the conversation with her was like, how is she even getting booked at 115? And why is the UFC doing this? The answer is that the UFC usually lets fighters pick their weight class until they miss weight like 2 or 3 times in some cases, or until they mess up like a big event. Khamzat Chimaev comes to mind as like maybe the first person who missed weight once, and the UFC actually took action about it. So I'm hoping Mora gets forced up to 122 or 125, pardon me. It might actually help her cardio, which seems to be pretty bad. It might actually help her win fights, because at 115 she can only win if she instantly overpowers people, because she can't fight for much longer than that. Like, the energy was gone by the second round, and it wasn't particularly high to begin with. Anyways, the amusement of this fight was actually commentary trying to like be like, oh, she's just got to get that weight cut down, and then like you look at her and it's like, no, she just needs to go up a weight class. Like, she's 5'6" and one of the thicker straw weights on the roster. Like we later on saw Andrea Lee versus Montana Del Rosa. I'm willing to bet that Eduarda Mortara is bigger than both of them. I'm willing to bet that. We'll see if they ever fight, I guess. But I really do believe that to be probably the case. Anyways, I've got Gomes against Pinheiro. I've got Mora going up to 125, but I don't really have an opponent. Cody Stamann versus Taylor Lapilus. Taylor Lapilus did his back foot kicking game. It was fine, but like at no point did the fight like kind of swing. It was like Stamann corner urging him, you got to do more. You got to do more. You got to let this out of the take. And they've done this multiple times where like Stamann has been begged by his corner to like do something, and he doesn't know how. He just got badly outstruck the entire time. Couldn't get takedowns. Got one in the third round, but that was about it. 1 for 6 on takedowns. Lapilus was able to shut it down, was able to outclinch him. It was kind of one of those things, like the most damaging thing was probably that Lapilus had no issue turning the clinch against him. Obviously, that was where Stamann needed the fight to be, and I have no problem with that. But yeah, I don't know. It was not very good. Lapilus, I've got Ayman Zahabi for next opponent. I've got Stamann against Rinya Nakamura. And then we had Pooja Tomar versus Hein Amanda. This was weird because I was getting some. Okay, I scored the fight 29-28 for Pooja Tomar. And to be clear here, I don't think that the people claiming that Amanda won are wrong at all. The first 2 rounds are exceedingly close. I'm actually kind of curious. What are per UFC stats the striking differences in rounds 1 and 2? Okay. Tomar plus 10 in the first round, plus 4 in the second round. And then the third round, I had Dos Santos landing more, but like by far having the best shots of the round. Now, I will say, despite having scored this fight for Tomar, I actually do agree that the scorecards here are bad, even though they essentially have my winner. Now, what I mean by this is that apparently heading into the third round, Matt Jones had Tomar up 20-18, which is my card. Sal D'Amato had Dos Santos up 20-18, which is a perfectly fine card. I have no problem with it. And then Derek Cleary had it in 1919. Now, my problem with this is that, not that 1919 is bad, it's that Derek Cleary, I don't understand your internal logic. Because he gave Dos Santos the first round and Tomar the second and the third round. Now, again, I read out the strike differentials. Plus 10 Tomar, plus 4 Tomar, plus 1 Dos Santos. He gave the plus 10 Tomar to Santos. And I want to be clear here is that if you thought Santos was landing the better shots this entire fight, I'm perfectly fine with that. She was moving forward. She was the aggressive one. And the moments where she trapped Tomar against the fence and started unloading with her, like with flurries, were the best offense of the fight. And that happened in the first and the second and third round. But if you're going to give Tomar a round here, internal logic, it has to be the first one. So that's kind of the bullcrap here, is that as much as I think Matt Jones' scorecard is wrong, but I kind of get it. Sal D'Amato's I have no issue with, but Derek Cleary's has no internal logic to it. He gave Tomar's best round to Dos Santos and gave Tomar the second and the third round. I don't understand that. And that would be something to appeal. Again, I scored this for Tomar. And I have no problem with Tomar winning. But you have one judge's scorecard here that makes 0 sense. It was pretty good. Let me go with the positives for Tomar. In the face of constant pressure, albeit bad pressure, because Amanda Dos Santos's pressure game is very much following. Her pressure footwork is bad. But in the face of at least constant forward momentum from the opponent, she was able to continue to land side kicks, body kicks, low kicks, and make use of her heavy kicking game to, put out pretty consistent offense. And in all 3 rounds, there was a decent number of strikes coming from her and landing. But her defense and her evasiveness are not very good. And I think it was really just a function of Dos Santos not having a good pressure game that allowed her to win this fight. So that is a worry. For Dos Santos, she's been kind of robbed in both of her fights, because I scored the first fight with Alencar for her. Again, a very, very close fight. I don't think the judges were even particularly wrong on it. It's just I had it a different way. If we look at the numbers, it was, here we go. Round 1 I gave to Dos Santos, unquestionably. Alencar went 0 for 3 on takedowns, got outstruck. Round 2 I gave to Alencar. Striking was relatively equal. Alencar to take down, 2 minutes and 11 seconds on top control, where she was able to pile up some ground and pound. And then round 3 was the kicker. I had it for Dos Santos, but it's a very close round. It's a round with 24 total strikes landed between the two of them, almost equally split. So unless you really, really, really had one of them landing significantly harder strikes than the other one, and I mean significantly in a round that had no knockdowns or any notable hurt moments, it was a very, very equal round that Alencar wound up getting, and therefore the fight. So it's kind of weird is that Dos Santos is now 0-2 in 2 fights that she very, very easily could have won. But at the same time, I also do think that it's there's just a size component here, because Tomar is not very big, and she looked like the much bigger fighter here. Again, one of those people that probably just wants an atomweight division. I've got Dos Santos against Dana White Contender Series fodder. Basically, just get this woman a win is kind of my goal at this point. And for Tomar, I've got Maria Oliveira, because I think Maria Oliveira is around. She's not very good, but she is big, rangy, and lanky. And that usually is something that a kick-heavy fighter probably will struggle with a little bit. I am intrigued to see what she does with that. The other option would be someone with a more physically potent takedown game than Dos Santos. Actually, what were the takedown numbers here? I don't think Dos Santos went for many. Which, from my voice, you can probably tell, I think is a mistake. Yeah, she went 0 for 3. She attempted 1 in each round. Did not get them. Was shrugged off pretty easily, don't get me wrong. So Tomar showed fairly decent, competent takedown defense. But I think there probably should have been more. And that might have done something, because it's not like Dos Santos is like a striker only girl. Like, her strength is that she's fairly well rounded. That was the card. Check the links down below for my social medias, my video gaming stuff, and the MMA Discord Fight Saver. Anyways, coming up next week, we've got the Perez versus Tyra card, which is not very good. The co-main event is Ikram Alaskarov versus Anatoly Trocoli, which is not a good fight. I understand that had to be someone else, right? Yeah, it was supposed to be Andre Muniz. That would be better, but yeah. Lucas Almeida versus Timothy Kawamba. I like Timothy Kawamba, to be clear, but like, that is a third fight of the night, is pretty weak. Miles Johns versus Douglas Silva de Andrade. Asu Almabaya versus Jose Johnson. Josh Quinlan versus Adam Fugit. Tadger Ulanbekov versus Joshua Van. Why is that not higher? Why? Ulanbekov is a ranked fighter, I think, by UFC stand. Like, he's top 10, I think, in the UFC rankings. Why is he not on the main card? Nate Manis versus Jimmy Flick. Garrett Armfield, Brady Heastan. Carly Judice versus... Oh, that's a softball chick, right? She lost to... Yeah. She lost to Ernesta Karakate on Contender Series. Versus Gabriel Fernandez. Jekka Saragi versus Weston Wilson, who... Interesting moment from the fights is that during the Jesse Butler fight, people were like saying he's going to fight Weston Wilson for like the worst fighter or whatever. I'm like, no. Come on. You got to give Butler some credit. He has like durability and coordination. And someone's like, we'll find out when Weston Wilson fights next week. And my response was, Weston Wilson's still on contract? Why? Anyways, he's fighting Jekka Saragi. Julia Palestra versus Josephine Knudsen. I'm actually looking forward to that one. I like Knudsen. And Nurembeke versus Milk Costa. I'm fine with that fight. Like, ironically, the bottom fights on that card are not terrible. Like the bottom two, and then like Judice versus Fernandez, Ulanbekov versus Van. These are not terrible fights. It's just the main card is ass. And then PFL regular season 4, we got Valentin Moldavsky versus Linton Vassell. It's a big heavyweight fight. Dakota Ducheva versus Chelsea Hackett. That's not very interesting. That's just kind of a squash match. But hey, the women's flyweight group it's not great. Dennis Goldsoff versus Thiago Santos. Actually, it kind of is, but like, there's some bottom end problems with it. Dennis Goldsoff versus Thiago Santos. Liz Carmouche versus Kana Watanabe. Tyler Santos versus Jenna Bishop. Marcelo Golm versus Tyler Alfortune. Oleg Pakov versus Davian Franklin. Shayna Young versus Alara Joan. Danilo Marquez versus, by the way, Danilo Marquez at heavyweight? Why? Fighting Tim Johnson. Julian Velasquez versus Lisa Maldin. Sumiko Inaba versus Saray Orozco, I think. And Melissa Ballack, who apparently has never fought professionally before, against 1-2 Christina Katsakis. That is all. Have a good day. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.